Welcome to another episode of The Unseen Paranormal, where some of the scariest things are unseen. I'm your host, Eric Freeman. Hey everyone, on today's show, we're going to the West Coast and talk to Jean-Pierre Giagnoli. Jean-Pierre is an actor, rapper, comedian, DJ, and paranormal investigator. He has a PhD in parapsychology and is the founder of and lead detective of Southern California Paranormal Detectives. Hey, Jean-Pierre, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself, Eric?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on the show and talking to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start off with how you got into the paranormal and what first sparked your interest.
Started when I was very young. I had my first experience when I would say about 2 years old. I saw my grandfather's spirit at my grandma's house. And it was a wee morning hours. I woke up and he was sitting in front of my bed in a wheelchair trying to talk to me. He passed away when I was 3 months old. So I only recognized him from the pictures I had seen of him. And when he realized I was scared, he took off from the room and disappeared through the dining room wall. As scared as I was, freaking out, I actually chased him and watched him disappear through the wall. Then I ran to my grandmother's room and told her what happened. And she downplayed it, said it was like a bad dream or a nightmare or whatever. For the next, I want to say 7 to 8 years, I started experiencing a lot of paranormal things, just seeing stuff when I was around. But I figured if my family didn't believe me, nobody else is going to believe me. So I kind of stayed really quiet about it and just kind of experienced it by myself. And then finally, about 7 or 8 years later, my family sat me down and said, hey, look, we didn't want to scare you. You were very little. But we've all experienced this kind of stuff. My grandma came from Italy and she experienced stuff out there. My mom was born here in the United States and experienced stuff. So it's kind of a family tradition, family history, that we're all kind of empaths, different abilities and sensitives to the paranormal stuff. And that's when it really jump started my interest. I was about 10 years old. And, there were shows in the 90s around that time, which was X-Files, sightings, even Unsolved Mysteries had episodes of, the paranormal and the supernatural and stuff like that. So there wasn't a lot of media about it. So really I got into a lot of books, reading on a lot of haunted location, things like that. And that just kind of built my interest. And by the time I hit high school, I met my best friend, who's the co-founder of the organization. And we just started actually going out and trying to figure out, how we investigate this stuff, finding local haunted places in Southern California to go check out. And we had family friends who owned businesses within haunted locations. They would get us in after hours so we could use our, night vision cameras and audio recorders and things like that. And that's how we kind of started building. And then by the time we got to college, met some more friends, learned a lot more about the technical side of things. I studied radio, TV, and film, as well as psychology and metaphysics later on. And that's what really got us in. We met some mentors, some really big names in the field out here in Southern California, and they mentored us and taught us kind of investigation techniques and things like that. And we just built from there. And we started the group about 2000, really. And then we became a nonprofit, an actual 501c3 in 2013. So that's kind of a quick overview of everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's good to come from a family that's open about that stuff. I come from a family who's always been open about their own paranormal experiences and being intuitive and all that type of stuff. And I think it just kind of fosters your curiosity, the natural curiosity. There's so many people out there that, their parents and their family are like, we don't talk about that, or they'll just tell them it's nothing, And I found a lot of people in the paranormal world are like that too, because that makes them even more curious to get out, since they were told, nothing's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Very true. Yeah, you definitely see both sides, why there's so much interest in this. I know for me, my lingering question, which I have some theories on, and what really is the question that sparked it, was, why does it seem like certain people experience it and others don't? So that was the question that still kind of lingers. I've come up with some theories on it, but definitely that was the biggest question that fueled my interest in the paranormal.
Yeah, and I kind of grew up like you did, just kind of thinking it was normal. And so the question is, why didn't other people experience that? And I wonder if it's because it was fostered as a young kid, and you just kind of, one of those things, the more you pay attention to it, the more it pays attention to you.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely one of the theories. I know one of my biggest theories is I think human beings, everyone, and I really don't exclude anyone from this, are capable of it. I think it's our mindset, like you said, it being cultivated when you're raised, being just kind of like open to other things, I think brings it in more. And I think that's one of the theories I have as to why certain people do and don't. I don't think that people don't have the capability, but I think we can be too logical and too, coming up with too many excuses or reasons for things happening. And, I think a lot of people have experienced it, but have brushed it off as, oh, coincidence. Oh, that was maybe my mind playing tricks on me. Human beings, for some reason, and I think it's a flaw, really, we have to know and define everything. I don't know why people don't like to live with a sense of mystery, but it seems like they don't. They have to know everything. We have to define and label everything, because if we don't, then all of a sudden it's like we're less or something. But I actually find life being a mystery, kind of the beauty of life, that we don't have the answer to everything, and miraculous and beautiful and unsuspecting and surprising things can happen. And that makes life exciting to me. So.
Yeah, and I think you also, with that view on life, you kind of retain that curiosity, kind of that childlike curiosity and wonderment of the world. I kind of have the same thing of,
exactly.
I don't want to necessarily know everything. I've worked in medicine for 20 years, and in that world, you got to resign yourself that you don't know everything. You can't, save everybody. And I think that translates to what you were saying in the paranormal field of you have to have that curiosity and not try to define and try to box everything up and be in control of everything.
Yes, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Very true. I definitely think I've definitely kept that childhood curiosity throughout my life. I always love to learn new things and find out new information and be open and receptive to new things, because I think it makes us well-rounded individuals and just it makes life more exciting that way too.
So your team has roughly 800 investigations of private residences and some well-known locations, such as the Queen Mary. How was that? That's such an iconic ship, but also iconic paranormal hotspot that a lot of the TV shows and a lot of the media you've seen do things with the Queen Mary.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was born in Long Beach, California, so I think that's part of it. For some reason, Long Beach has a special place in my heart. I always find myself going back there, even unrelated to paranormal things, but definitely, obviously, the paranormal brings me out there a lot. So, yeah, just being raised there, being around the ship, I've had a ton of experiences, sometimes just on going to visit the location. I know me and my wife, she was part of my team as well. And investigates the paranormal. We were looking for wedding venues, and the Queen Mary was on our list too, to kind of check it out, see what the prices were, and you look at maybe a part of the ship we'd want to have, our wedding ceremony in. So that was one of the crazy experiences we had. So we went on a tour, kind of went around, hung out, and we got to go on our own as well. And when we were going on our own, we actually ended up going through a door that we didn't know we could go through or couldn't. And we went through and nothing happened, but we got stuck in a bottom part of the ship, close to the boiler room, but it was made into like kind of almost like a club. There was like a dance floor and, all that stuff. But it was covered by black curtains. And we walked in, got through that door, and we couldn't get back out. And it sounded like there was a party going on, but it sounded almost like big band music, like almost like 1920s, something like that, something along those lines. Wow. And me and my wife just looked at each other and we're like, well, we can't get out. And I was like, well, we're going to have to take a chance. So I'll just open the curtain and we'll find our way out that way. So I pulled back the curtains and the music and everything dead stop. There was literally like a couple tables and chairs on top of each other and the room was empty. And me and my wife just looked at each other because like we both heard the same thing. We thought it sounded like there was like, at least 100 people in there dancing and partying, whatever. And all of a sudden I pulled the curtains back, dead silence. And that was really interesting. But through that, we found another door and were able to get back to where we were. But that was a crazy experience. And then on one of our anniversaries, she got us like a Groupon thing where we did all the ghost tours. We stayed on the ship on B deck, one of the most reported to be haunted decks. So that was really fun. So we brought our equipment, obviously, and did some investigating late at night on the ship. And it was Easter weekend, so it was really dead. There was only a few people staying on the ship. So we really got the ship to ourselves. I took a tour with one of the tour guides on the legit ghost tours where they talked about all the sightings and hauntings on the ship that are reported. And I asked him, where can and can't we go? Obviously, we're on a ship and all this. And I was like, well, the official, line is, don't go behind any doors or ropes that you see. The unofficial line is if you get lost somewhere, just tell them you got lost, and you'll be fine. So, just obviously be safe and careful. So yeah, we just kind of spent our night on the ship, bust out our EMF meters and our equipment, went to like the most reported haunted spots on the ship. We went to room B340, which is reportedly one of the most haunted rooms on the ship. They opened it up to the public more recently, but when we stayed there years ago, it was actually shut down because they had too many reports and people were freaked out by it. So they ended up shutting the room down and not opening it to the public. So we went to that room, near it in that area. And they had taken the numbers off and everything, so you kind of had to figure out where it was at. And the room was empty inside. We could see through some of the wood paneling they had on the room. And we heard walking inside there, and our EMF meter was going off. So we definitely had quite a few experiences. We stayed on B deck at that time. And in our room, we heard sounds at night. We took a rest during the day in the room, and you could hear moving around in the room. And then late at night, we heard moving around in the room too. So definitely have been on that ship a lot. I worked there actually as one of the monsters for their Halloween event, Dark Harbor, for the last couple of years, and had a ton of experiences with the supernatural. I worked there as well. So it's definitely a big history. That ship has been through a lot, not just sailing, obviously, as a cruise liner, but also as the Gray Ghost in World War II and bringing troops back and forth. Was definitely a big tragic part of that history. There were people wounded on the ship, people who died on the ship, lots of stuff like that. So big history there and definitely a lot of experiences.
Yeah, and it was built by the Knott line, which those are the same people that built the Titanic, right? They had a hand in
that
the
is
Titanic.
Correct.
And it was that type of like luxury type ship. Also, you appeared on the History Channel show Haunted History, talking about the Manson murders and the Spawn Ranch, and you got to investigate Spawn Ranch.
Yes, that's correct. So that was definitely a fun and interesting thing to do. They, obviously being Southern California, I'm close to Hollywood. And as I'm involved in entertainment and other aspects. And really, I always used to think the paranormal was something that was separate from my entertainment. But really, it connects fully, especially with how popular, the paranormal stuff is on the media and everything. So they contacted me. They asked if I had been to Spawn Ranch before I knew of it. And they said, would we want to go investigate for the show and, possibly bring back any evidence or experiences to them? And we said, yeah. So me and my team went out and we investigated Spawn Ranch. When we were talking to Shorty Shea, who was killed on the property, our EMF meter responded to it. So that was really great. And with that show, I actually went to almost every location that Manson was reported to be near, or, he sent his followers to kill, Sharon Tate, for example, on Cielo Drive. So I went to all the locations, the David Oman house, which is very famous because it's it's on Cielo Drive, right next to where Sharon Tate was murdered. So, that property has a lot of activity because it's right next to where everything took place. But they used just the footage of Spawn Ranch because we caught so much evidence and had so many experiences while we were at Spawn Ranch investigating. So, it was really cool. There's a lot of history there. Most of Spawn Ranch is owned by the church that's across the street from what used to be Spawn Ranch. It used to be an old Western movie set, and by the time Manson took over it, it was kind of free floating, sitting there. It wasn't really used a lot. And the caretaker, who was Shorty Shea, was killed on the property, and it's still debatable, up in the air. But our investigation and our response on our EMF meter, when we were asking questions and investigating out there, was that Manson himself did it. But it's still debatable whether it was his followers or him that actually killed Shorty Shea. So,
and they found other bodies throughout the year out there too, as well, right?
Yes, they did. The most famous one though was Shorty Shea because they were looking for him for a long time, and they didn't know what had happened to him. And then one of the followers brought police to where the body was dumped or buried on the property. So,
and Manson's family, as he called it, that's where kind of their base of operations. That's where they hung out, was at Spawn Ranch.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, it was one of their main bases of operation here in Southern California because, again, it was just sitting there, kind of wasn't being used at the time. It was kind of that, hippie generation. So there were squatters and they just kind of stayed where they wanted. So they ended up taking over Spawn Ranch because it wasn't really being used. So they really made that a home base. And from what my brother, who's a medium who was with us there, picked up, is like they did use it as a central spot for plotting a lot of what they wanted to do and their plans, for whoever they're going to take out or whatever they were trying to do. So it definitely was a base of operation for them.
And the house on Cielo Drive is not there anymore. They tore it down after the murders, correct? And they built other houses there.
That is correct. Well, it actually was there for a long time. Trent Reznor actually owned the property for a while, but even he said the activity in the home was too much for him, and he left the property. So it was owned by a few famous people after the murders took place and the tragic history. And finally, when they couldn't sell it anymore, the real estate companies were having a hard time. They ended up demolishing the property and rebuilding. So yeah, the real legit property that was there when the murders took place is no longer in existence. So,
but they reused for the new house. They reused part of the slab or something, the concrete slab.
I think so, yeah. But I think they tried to really shift it and move it around and make it something different, probably in hopes of calming people's fears of maybe the hauntings and obviously the tragedy that took place there. And so that it's not so recognizable, because I think it's such a famous story. People know where that house is. People know where the tragedy took place, that they wanted to really change the image of that area.
And the gentleman that you mentioned earlier, I think he's been going around talking about his house being haunted, which is kind of built on the hill, kind of on that same property.
Yes, it's not very far from the original property, and there's a really dark history in that area anyway. There was, from my knowledge of the history of the area, is that there's a lot of Native American history, potential burial grounds on that mountain side, and the spirits there of the past natives who lived are definitely not happy of the land being disturbed the way it was and built up with homes and different things. So that's another theory as to why there's so many rampant hauntings there and activity, because of that history. And then you have the tragic history of what happened to Sharon Tate and, everything that took place with Manson and his followers too. So.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of come to the forefront again with pop culture because of the Quentin Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it's kind of a reimagining of what would have happened if they all hadn't been killed, but kind of a fantasy, but it still has lots of good history in there about the locations and that type stuff as well.
Very true. Yeah.
What's some other famous locations that you have gotten to investigate?
There's quite a few out here, but I would say one that sticks out to me, because a lot of people probably haven't heard about it or know about it, is I actually worked at the Disneyland Resort for 10 years. And once they found out I did the paranormal, eventually I got to actually investigate and do ghost tours, haunted ghost tours for the cast members. That's what they call the employees at Disneyland. And we walked around and talked about all the famous hauntings and ghost stories, the legit ones and the ones that were used as media and publicity. There was a couple of videos in the early 2000s that surfaced of supposed apparitions walking through the park in different areas. And because I was doing the ghost tours and I had people in entertainment there, they actually told me that those were publicity stunts that just didn't go the way Disney thought they would go. So they weren't legit, which I'm not surprised. Based on all the 20 years of experience in the paranormal, you're usually pretty good at catching stuff that's legit and stuff that's not. And I really felt it just seems too perfect. There's no classic tales of evidence with these videos. And then to find that out while I was giving the ghost tours was really cool. But there's a lot of hauntings at Disney. When I did investigations at Disneyland itself, even though I brought, obviously people on tour with me and everything, we talked about the hauntings. And when we did legit investigations and we asked questions with our EMF and whatever else, we got responses. And it does seem like there's a lot of former cast members who just have so much love for Disney that they never left after they actually left this world, because that's literally to them the happiest place on earth. But there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. Guests want to put their family members' ashes in the park, and that happens sometimes during the day, where guests will come in with their, hidden in their bags, and, they spread their family members' ashes within rides and other areas of the park. There was one morning I was working, which was really crazy. I worked at Space Mountain early on in my career at Disney, and I got there early at opening, and all of a sudden we were shut down. Indiana Jones was shut down. The train, the train that goes around the park, was shut down, Matterhorn. And they had found human ashes spread out through almost the entire park and all the major rides. So we had at least 3 to 4 hours of shutdown, because, they have to come in and use specialized equipment to clean up everything, obviously for safety reasons. And guests were very upset. And obviously we couldn't talk about what was going on to them. We just said, technical difficulties or whatever. But we suspect that a cast member charged somebody to like spread their family's ashes in the park or something like that, because a lot of people want to do that. And for safety reasons and health reasons, obviously Disney says, no, you can't do that. But maybe the places they were at, like only an employee could have gotten to, like a guest wouldn't have been able to do that. So stuff like that is also other reasons and theories that Disney's haunted, and some of the spirits that linger there. So there's definitely a huge haunted history of Disneyland and a lot of stuff that took place there. So.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. And you've gotten to another popular park is Knott's Berry Farm, and you've gotten to investigate there as well.
Yes, I worked there as well. I worked there in rides for, I want to say a year or two almost. And then I worked there at Knott's Scary Farm as one of the monsters. Funny enough, that's where I met my wife. We both worked as monsters there. But when I worked there as a employee in rides, I actually encountered a lot of paranormal activity. There was one time I was working on the, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's the swings that spin around in Fiesta Village. I was working that attraction, and I had saw somebody walking under the swings, and they had obviously gone from under the swing. So I emergency stopped the ride to go check and make sure that everything was all right. That's a safety concern. And I waited till that person had passed. I stopped the ride. I went to look, and there was nobody there. And there's a few people on the ride. I asked them if they had seen the gentleman I saw. They said no. But it was serious enough for me to actually stop the attraction for a safety concern, and there was nobody there. One of the more famous ones that used to happen all the time, and I was actually a supervisor in the area when it happened, was the Jaguar Temple in Fiesta Village. Now, the reports have always been that there's like a man that looks like a monk. He's hooded, like has a cloak, and he's walking up, because we have cameras throughout to make sure everything's all right there. And there's cameras throughout, and you see a person in a hood walking through the entire temple and the queue, and then they never get to the top. Nobody ever shows up. And there was multiple times where I was a supervisor, and I get a call from my employees, and they're like, "Hey, can you get up here right now, Jean-Pierre? Like we're freaking out. We keep on seeing this guy in a hood walking up, and he never appears." And, I go with my flashlight, and I go around, I walk the whole queue, and we can't find any trace of a person dressed like that, and they just kind of vanish. So there's definitely a lot of history there. One particular story too, and it goes back again to Native Americans, is that some of that where Knott's Berry Farm is built was a native land, and they have a couple of tribes represented within the entrance of the park. They have like teepees and different things. And when they had first built that as kind of like, an homage and respect to the tribes, they actually had put the pottery and some of the stuff they collected to put on display in the wrong tribe section. And they said that the pottery and different things that they would place, if they were not in the correct, connected to the correct tribes, that the pottery would be broken the next morning and stuff would always be missing and things like that. And then once they finally got the proper, artifacts in the proper sections for the natives, then they stopped having those occurrences. So yeah, there's definitely a long history, and a lot of the stuff they actually placed in the park in certain areas were like antiques from other places. They actually brought buildings from Calico Ghost Town to Knott's Berry Farm and filled it with a lot of authentic buildings with a lot of history. And that's another reason they say that Knott's Berry Farm is haunted as well, because they actually moved those buildings to Knott's Berry Farm from, the places that they were at.
Yeah. And since you've done so many investigations, I know it's going to be hard for you to pick one, but what is some of your favorite places that you ever investigated?
Let's see. My favorite places. Definitely I love the Queen Mary. It has such history, and I've been there so many times and have a ton of different stories from that place, from myself as well as my other team members. That again, I was born in Long Beach, so I think that's another reason I have a connection to that area. So definitely Queen Mary's on the top of my list. I would love to do an official investigation. Most of what I've done there is obviously unofficial, but I still got to kind of travel around and investigate with me and some of my team members there. But Queen Mary is definitely one of my top favorite places. There's a place in Orange County in Fullerton called Villa del Sol. And we used to have a family friend who owned a flower shop in there. And it actually is the original Hotel California that the band sings about. They based it on that building, which used to be a hotel and now is like a business center. And they have like, different businesses in there and restaurants, things like that. I've investigated there multiple times with lots of activity happening each time. And it ended up being one of my favorite places just because we had so many things actually happen. There's so many stories that it's a really fascinating place that we've had a lot of experiences at, and it has a rich history. So that's another place that really stands out to me because we went there multiple times. Another one of my favorite cases we've done, and this we did for a few years. So we did multiple investigations over the years. The La Habra Depot Theater in La Habra, California. It's an old train station that was across the street near the train tracks that they moved over and they turned into a theater. And the most famous spirit is of this little girl named Molly. And we've encountered her. We caught a really cool figure, which you can see on our website, in front of one of the train cars that they use for like a dressing room now. And that place, like I said, we did multiple investigations for many years. We had multiple witnesses with us when we had activity happen. And that place is definitely up there on my list because the people who own the theater were always so inviting and welcoming. We had an author come by and do a story on us and our investigation of the La Habra Depot Theater. We've been in the local newspaper multiple times for that case as well. So, yeah, that place also sticks out in my mind. We've had a ton of experience. One of the creepiest ones, I was in the train car by myself. And this is way back in the day before a lot of digital stuff. So we had to go in and check our batteries and change video tapes out, or DV tapes out. And I went by myself in the train car to check the batteries, and everything was fine. And all of a sudden, I went to the other side of the train and turned around, and I see a little girl with very dark hair, almost like if you've seen The Grudge or you're familiar with that character, it kind of looked like that character, but it was all black and like a black dress and long black hair, and I couldn't see the face, but it was just like standing there kind of staring at me. I could just tell by the direction it was looking, it was kind of staring at me. And I tried to remain calm, but it was definitely a surprising experience that I didn't know how to react because we had dealt with the spirit named Molly before, but this didn't feel like her. It definitely had more of a negative feeling to it. So I just tried to remain calm and was like, hello, trying to talk to it. And as soon as I tried to communicate a little more, my co-founder came in to check on me and it vanished. And that was a pretty intense experience because, we're trying to figure out what's there, and something that I've discovered at the Queen Mary, that I've discovered at most of the places we've investigated, is usually we find that there's some portal or doorway open for things to come in and out. So usually there are staple spirits that are there. They're like, oh, okay, this one always appears here and she's always in this area, or he's always there. But then there's stuff that comes in and out that you're like, I've never seen that before. And other people who work there confirm that they've never encountered this type of stuff. So that's definitely, those are probably the three top places that I've investigated multiple times that I really like.
Yeah, and that's some awesome evidence and awesome experiences that you've had. Being a parapsychologist, on TV now, you see a lot of, the shows with doing a lot of the drama and somebody's getting possessed and they're all about demons on some of them. What is your take on the demonic, and how prevalent is it really in the paranormal world? I mean, you've done hundreds of investigations and like I said, you're a parapsychologist. And so what is your take on the whole demonic haunting and that type of stuff?
It's definitely sensationalized by TV. The best way to describe it is it's not as common as you think, but Hollywood and television makes it seem like it's way more common than it actually is. So it's definitely exaggerated. The example I always tell people when they ask me about that stuff, because obviously people view me as an expert and someone who's knowledgeable in this area, is that, if you think that there's 7 billion people in the world, and maybe I've come across legitimately maybe 2,000 cases that deal with demonic things that seem to have, be legitimate, says that it's really not as widespread as the media makes it out to be. I've been in 5 TV deals for paranormal shows, and most of them I turned down. Some of them just kind of fell through, and it's because sorry if I have to burst anyone's bubble, but reality TV is not reality.
Right.
We've been in these meetings and they want to turn us into characters. They want us like, I always feel so insulted because I am an actor. So you want me to use my acting skills to act on this show that's supposed to be real, and you're not even going to pay me appropriately for acting. You're hoping that I'll get exposure, or if the show does well, then you'll renegotiate and give me a better, give me better pay or whatever. I just feel like I feel like I'm being used for my skills, and then I'm selling out something I'm very passionate about and I care about. So I've always been more like, I'd rather be legit and do what I'm passionate about and do it my way than to get some TV show where you have to be like, oh, let's jump around and scream and say everything's a demon and I'm being possessed all the time. Because, doing this for so long, and I really feel like our team has a really good reputation. We're respected. We're known in the field because we're out there actually helping people. We don't charge people for our services. So we really try to give back to our community by what we do. And I think that was more important to me than, that 15 minutes of fame for running around and screaming and whatever. Because even like when it comes to, I get interviewed a lot for the paranormal. Obviously, it's an interesting topic for many people. And when I retell some of my most intense stories, people like always tell me like, why can't you tell them more scared? And I was like, well, if I'm in this to help people, you think it would really help someone if I show up to their house and I'm terrified of what I'm about to encounter? No, I'm trying to calm people's nerves down and get them to understand that they don't have to be scared of it, and that's going to help them deal with whatever they're dealing with. Because if I go in scared and jumping around, that's not really going to help them. So I think that's why I'm so calm when I talk about the subject, because I've done it for so many years and I really try to calm people's nerves, because most people don't understand it. And they see the media that we're talking about, and they just amplify what's there. I think it's a demon that's trying to kill me.
Right.
What happened? Well, I heard a noise. Well, that doesn't sound like death to me, but So I would say, just based on my experience, it's not as common as people make it out to be. It exists, but I think on the psychological aspect and the human behavior aspect, I really believe you feed whatever you feed in your actions and your behaviors and the way you think. It's an old Native American saying that there's two wolves within inside us. One is love and one is fear. And whichever one you feed is the one that, takes control. And I think that really is a great way to describe the paranormal. Because, if you feed that fear, I feel like you feed that energy. And if those spirits are evil and negative, you give them that fear that just makes them stronger and capable of doing worse things to you.
Yeah. And also, there are people who are not very good in life. So why would they be good in death?
Very true.
There are people who use people and abuse people and take advantage of people, and they're just not very nice. So what makes you think that just because they crossed over to a different plane that they're going to be nice?
Yes, very true. And then we have the theory of the non-human entities, which demonics are usually classified under. So with that, we really don't know what those things are, and they are much more capable of doing physical things in our world, even though they're on the other side. Like I've seen objects move, get thrown, people get scratched, those kinds of things over the years of doing this. And it definitely seems like when we encounter things like that, it's less human, you know what I mean? Like to be able to build up that kind of energy to do something physical is not normal for a spirit to do. So,
and also with your team, you've investigated some UFO claims and some cryptid claims and some of the other stuff. Talk about some of the more fringe, I guess, paranormal. Everybody's familiar with the ghost, and then you have
of
UFO
course.
and cryptids and that type of stuff too.
Yeah, and then that even goes back to our earlier point about having an open mind. So, I've been called by clients crying because they called the paranormal team and said I was thrown across a room. I had to go to the emergency room, and they told this woman who called me in tears, "Oh, that's not possible." And it's like, how can you deal with a field that is out there and still be closed-minded enough to say that that's not possible? Like,
right.
you have to investigate and find out whether it seems legit or not. You can't just, write off somebody right away. But we've investigated lots of different things. And obviously, like you mentioned, UFOs was another one. We've definitely done a lot of UFO cases. We've caught some cool craft. One of the strangest experiences with UFOs, we were shooting a sizzle reel / pilot for this UFO TV show. And we did it in Lake Elsinore, California. And there's a lot of reports. We found real witnesses we interviewed of objects they saw. And the producer who was with us shooting, we started freaking out because we caught something. We saw something in the sky that we couldn't describe. And he thought we were joking because he was filming our reaction. He wasn't looking up at the sky. And he was like, oh, it's just the moon. You know, they're exaggerating. He turned around and was shocked. And we're filming this like diamond shaped light in the sky doing crazy maneuvers. And we couldn't explain it. We've never seen anything like that before. I have a little bit of an Air Force background. I was in Civil Air Patrol when I was younger, and I learned about aircraft. I learned how to fly helicopters and airplanes. So I have a basic knowledge. I never got my license because I didn't put in enough hours, but I have the base knowledge of aircraft and aeronautics and things like that. Yeah. So I usually can spot something strange in the sky if it's out there, and it doesn't seem like a normal craft. So yeah, we caught this thing do crazy maneuvers. And the weirdest thing was they shot the sizzle reel with us and we caught this incredible thing. And I'm like, man, how are we not going to get a show? We caught like one of the most incredible pieces of evidence like we've ever caught, especially UFO wise. And when he finally sent the reel, he had cut out the strange maneuvers that we actually captured it doing. And he put in like him moving the camera around the moon. But there was a little bit of footage of the actual diamond-shaped thing, and I was able to rip it myself before they pulled it down. And a week later, they just called and shut down the project without any explanation. And we were just like, that was really strange. How are you going to catch some incredible evidence and then they shut the whole project down? But that's kind of just one crazy story that happened. But we've definitely experienced lots of strange craft and activity doing UFO cases, and sometimes it's harder to catch, obviously, using cameras and stuff and handhelds. The footage doesn't always come out the clearest. I think the diamond shape, which I do have some footage of, definitely we got a clear picture of it because we had pretty clear skies and we were away from the major cities, so we were able to get a good glimpse of that craft. But a lot of the time it's just hard. You got a light kind of moving in the sky if you're driving or moving around. But we've definitely seen some strange craft over the years. I think one of the craziest things we do, because we never really encountered any cryptids, although we did go out on a few cases that were a little more mountainous areas in California, but we never really caught anything. But one of the more crazy cases is we were called into this case in Mentone. And these we have a couple of cases that were like this. It dealt more with conspiracy stuff. So this gentleman in Mentone, California, called us up and said, hey, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in my house. You guys, can you come investigate? And we're like, of course. So, we have a standard questionnaire we ask our clients to make sure they're sound of mind. And, we're not going to deal with anything too crazy if we show up there, more with them as people, not so much the paranormal stuff.
Right.
And trying to understand where these sources came from. Like, did they mess with Ouija boards or tarot cards or witchcraft or things like that? Because honestly, like a good 90% of our cases, as soon as we ask those questions, well, yeah, my little sister messed with it and didn't know what she was doing. Yeah, that might be why. Is that when the activity started? Well, yeah. Well, then I think we kind of figured out the source of where this all came from.
Right.
Sorry, just going back a few steps. But anyway, we asked this guy all the questions. They seemed to answer it, thoughtfully and legitimately. So we went out to Mentone, California. It was kind of a drive for us from where we're at. And as soon as we get there, he's like, do you guys believe in conspiracies? And we're like, well, it depends. I mean, on some level, yeah, it just depends what kind of conspiracy it is. Obviously, there's certain ones that are a little more crazy and ones that are a little more grounded in reality. And he's like, well, I think the government's doing experiments on us because we have weird things happen. And we literally showed up in that neighborhood and old military Jeep started like circling the neighborhood while we were there. This dude pulled out drywall and it had like electronic fibers in the drywall. And my tech guy does installs of all kinds of systems, and he never had seen anything like that in drywall before. So there was all this weird stuff, like even in his wooden fences, when you shine a light on the fence at night and you take the light away, there's like these little sparkly fibers on the fence. And there's all this weird stuff that we had never encountered before, as far as it wasn't ghostly. It was more like, well, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, like my neighbors like do weird military drills and run around, and there's like cameras hidden on their trees with, like camouflage on it and stuff. And we saw all this and he had pictures of it. I mean, I was surprised because Mentone has a big meth problem, and he was a former meth user who was clean. But when he was on meth, he kept all the evidence he captured, and it was legit. Like we couldn't explain what he had captured. And we were doing a spirit box, which I'm not a fan of the spirit box, to be honest, but one of my team members wanted to try it out. And so we were doing it, and my brother had said something to the effect of, like, what you're doing to these people isn't right. And all the static on the spirit box stopped. And whatever was there, we heard a male voice come through and say, F you, basically, like really loud. And we were just like, and we have that evidence as well. We went there a few times. The first time was still the most intense. I went outside just to kind of look around and see if I see anything weird. And a laser from like 2 blocks away hit me in between the eyes. My tech guy was behind me, thankfully, but like I lost all control and collapsed. And then he picked me up, and then we walked. I got my bearings back and was able to stand again. And we walked to the middle of the street, and we're looking around, and all of a sudden, like 20 cats just came and surrounded us in a circle. And cats are very protective, so they just kind of a protective thing they do.
Yeah.
But that was a very strange case because really we didn't have any actual paranormal activity happen, but we had a lot of actually human activity going on. We had weird military jeeps circling the neighborhood. There's an old supposedly shut down Air Force underground base that's near that area too. So there's just this weird history of the area. And it looks like the government may be doing experiments on people who are on meth to see their reactions to. It's almost like, they set up this whole environment to kind of test them and see the reactions of what these people on drugs are doing. At least that's what we were able to come to terms with. And I have a good friend of mine, spiritualist, called Bonnie Vent from San Diego. She's one of my mentors and a good friend. And there's this company that is willing to scientifically test strange objects and things you may discover. But you have to fill out a questionnaire and tell them what you got and everything. And so I contacted this company and I said, hey, we have pieces of drywall with weird fibrous electronics in it and all this kind of stuff. And we described, where it came from and what happened. And they actually refused to test it. They said, oh, we're sorry, but we can't help you. And I was
Wow.
like, but you're supposed to help me. So yeah, it was really strange. That's one of them. And then, even further outside of the spectrum of just ghosts, we had a case in Orange County of these 2 sisters who lived separately. And they said that ghosts were like going in their safety deposit boxes and stealing important papers of theirs and different things. And it didn't make sense. I'm like, a ghost wouldn't have to like rummage through your stuff in your house, and they couldn't get in your safety deposit box. Only you could do that. Like, that just doesn't make sense to us from what we know. So we asked them all the standard questions. And finally, because we were so open-minded about it, we said, hey, like, do you have any knowledge someone may not want you to have or be worried that you might tell someone, things like that? And eventually we got to where their niece did work on some top secret project in Iraq during the war out there. And we think that whoever she worked for might think that they know something about it, because the stuff they described, they said they heard this low humming sound. They would knock out and wake up and their house would be a mess, like somebody was looking for something. And I was like, a ghost doesn't have to look through your stuff. It can find it if it wants. Like, this sounds like they were using you to look for stuff. And the first night we went to the first sister's house, we actually started hearing a low vibration. And as soon as we noticed it, it stopped. And we were like, And this is before she told us about the vibration. So we went out and we said, hey, like, so tell us what happens when you say you pass out. And I was like, well, we hear this like low humming sound. And we were like, oh, we just had that happen in your bedroom. We heard a low humming sound, but it stopped. And I was like, we think like it's kind of that like mind control type of thing where they knock you out, maybe using that low frequency and then use them to look for whatever they were looking for. But it seemed to make sense more on that level because we didn't really find any actual paranormal activity. But the strangest thing we did find surrounding their entire both of those properties, was 2 different properties. Literally the lines of the property had so much energy. When we went with our EMFs, we could go every inch of the, outline of their property, and the EMF readings were just off the charts. Like, energy that just shouldn't be there. It's natural if it's like, an electrical box or, other energy sources, but we were near no power lines, nothing like that. And we were getting readings off the charts. And it was just like, is there stuff installed here? Like, is there weird energy in the area? And we couldn't find anything that would cause that kind of high energy. The second time we went to the other sister's house, we had like I think it was a C-130, like fly very low over the property as we were approaching the property. And it's just really strange because, just because of airspace regulations and things like that, it shouldn't have been flying that low at that altitude over an area that it shouldn't be flying. So we had stuff like that happen on those cases, and it really expanded our repertoire as a group, where it's like, okay, we do ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and now even conspiracy stuff, because it's measurable with a lot of the equipment we use. So those were two cases that were just very strange and out of the box, but luckily being there for the clients helped them, because we helped them understand what was going on. It calmed their fears that we were able to clearly try and figure out what was happening and find a source for it. So
yeah, and even with like the high strangeness, which is kind of the term that's thrown around the paranormal with that, people are still looking for validation that they're not crazy. Like what is going on is really going on, and it just, you know, a lot of people think paranormal, supernatural, that it's all about spirits and ghosts, but it encompasses a huge community of just unexplainable things, and yeah, people are always looking for. I've heard it many times going into investigations with my team. People are just like, I just want somebody to document this so I know that I'm not crazy. And
100%. That's the majority of what people want, because people ask me if we like do cleansings or all that, and we've done cleansings. You know, my wife's Native American, so we've done sage cleansings. We have our own little spiritual cleansing we do to like put protection over a home and people to like push things out. But most of the time, people just want validation. They just want to know they're not crazy, and somebody who has experience comes in and explains things to them. They're not as scared, especially when you can tell them, look, I know you watch movies and TV, but this isn't that. And that usually calms them down a lot too. So, yeah.
So what do you have going on? I know the COVID has kind of put a damper on a lot of things, but what does your team have going on here in the near future?
Right now it's kind of up in the air. Obviously COVID has really stopped a lot from happening. I'm more working on the entertainment side solo. My wife went back to college, so she's busy with school. Unfortunately, me and my younger brother had a falling out, just had a bad situation. And, we're not really on good terms right now. And everybody kind of has their own lives. So it's still there. We still try and help people. We do a lot of electronic communication through phone and through email, consulting people if they need help, and figuring out if we need to go in and investigate. You know, we may do that as well. Obviously, taking safety precautions if we do. But a lot of it's been more long distance communication, and even just having someone to listen to seems to help our clients a lot. Just to talk them through it, explain things to them, get their nerves, calm. That's been a lot of it. Personally, actually, I've had a passion project I want to do for a long time, and having the downtime, I started working on it. I'm making a whole rap album about the paranormal. I rap about ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, all kinds of stuff. So I'm really excited about that. I'm hoping once if they ever get back to normal, my biggest plan for that is to actually do what I call a ghost tour, where I want to perform only at haunted venues and do like a VIP experience with my fans and actually investigate the venue with them either before or after the show. So that's kind of like my future plans personally. But I think for the team right now, since we're all kind of distant from each other because of COVID and everything, we're just planning in the future to just do get-togethers at haunted places. And then if people need help, obviously we'll help them too. But it's definitely slow right now with the way the world's working.
And if people want to know more information about you, they can go to paranormaldetectives.org, or you also have a Facebook page. Just look up Southern California Paranormal Detectives. And your music page is mcpierre.com.
Yeah, and you can find all my paranormal stuff on there as well.
And they can also look you up on IMDb. You have your own IMDb page.
That's correct, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we are out of time for the day. I appreciate you coming on. It's been an awesome conversation, and I look forward to maybe talking to you again in the future. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day, and we'll definitely talk soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time on The Unseen Paranormal. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at our website, unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And don't forget to like, review, rate, and share with all your friends. Thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. Listen to our theme song and more of his music at chrislipsmusic.com. And remember, some of the scariest things are unseen.